And we are live. And by we, I mean me, just Doug, here to talk a little Sunday baseball, Sunday fantasy baseball, here on the Dugout on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Network. I was kind of started a little slow because I know people are having their issues. I'm having my issues too. I am once again broadcasting in the middle of scattered heavy thunderstorms. So if I blink out like I did a couple weeks ago, I want to say up front that give me about 15 minutes to try to get back. If not, I'll reschedule for, I'll do my best to reschedule for 5 p.m. on the same site. And I would start from scratch, so you can be a little bit late if you missed that. There's a free cough. I also I've noticed that there is a little difficulty with the chat room today. I'm not getting it to load up, so if you're not having that, I will check the message board on Facebook. But you can catch this on Facebook, or you can catch it on YouTube, or you can catch it on no, it's not actually. I don't know why it's not there. There's something wrong with the website today, but I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna press for it anyway. It is what life is. Let's see where we're at. This is where we're broadcasting. You can catch this on Facebook. We're broadcasting from the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Baseball Facebook site. I keep telling you to be kind of upbeat. I had a tough week this week. Don't get me wrong. Still got baseball. It's better than no baseball, but this show is mostly about waiver wire because it's supposed to blend in with my own searching waiver wire for my own leagues, and I find myself in the terrible predicament of having to spend a good amount of fab to buy back players that I released earlier in the year because I didn't think they'd be back for a little while. So I'm going to wind up dropping a lot of fab money this week on David Price. No, that's kidding, but he's just one of the guys I dropped. Not that he's the one that's least important, because I know that some people in my leagues listen. I think that it's not such a cryptic thing that you can't figure it out. I think you could have figured it out if I hadn't told you. So that's why I don't have a problem talking about it. But there'll be people mentioned today's show for sure. On the bright side, friend of the show, Nick Gordon, got called up for the Twins. So I think I'll start with the call-ups because of that. Nick Gordon is Nick Gordon becomes the he's coming up. He's wearing number. He's not wearing number 5. He's no longer a G5. He's wearing a different number. He had to switch from 5 because of Eduardo Escobar. Then they traded Escobar. He could be 5 again. But anyway, he's back. But he's not the news that we're talking about. Alex Kirilloff for the Twins also. Don't 100% know if these are just COVID replacement call-ups or if they're permanent things. I think with Kirilloff, it's probably permanent. With Gordon, it's probably not. But, Nick Gordon did, as G5, he did say I could play his song, I'm the Man, as the opening to my show 2 years ago. And he's still a good guy. Be the third player in the majors simultaneously from University High School. Go University High School Titans. University High School, of course, got put on the map because Chris Johnson went there, the running back who ran for 2,000 yards. But right now there are 3 university alumni playing baseball right now. That's Nick Gordon, Brad Miller, and Nick Senzel. Sorry, Jesse Winker. I get those two guys confused. Winker and Gordon were on the same team. But Winker was 2 years ahead. Anyway, first thing I'll say is don't panic. If you want a player, you're going to have to pay for him in fab. That is life. That's what I'm going through. I'm going to spend all my money buying my fab players back. But I actually think that people say, well, that's a lot of money you're going to spend on fab in week 4. And yes, it will be. But here's the most important but. I don't think that there's anything I could do to improve my team more than getting rid of my fab and stopping me from tinkering with the bottom parts of my lineup. You're chasing all these things. Like I said, the first rule of waiver wire pickup is only pick up a player when there's something better. Now, it seems to be pretty easy to say there's something better when your guy is injured or your guy is sent to the minors or your guy is whatever, but the truth is most of those guys, you knew it. you knew that they were going to have these problems at some level, and you drafted him. I drafted him anyway, figuring I'll miss him for a few weeks, and that's life. But I look at I'm in a best ball league, and I'm in a league where I have weekly fab, and now in the weekly fab league, I was in last place after third week. I moved up to ninth because I know my team is good. It's just some of these guys are a little bit off. But in my best ball league, I'm in first place by a sizable margin. It's they do it by points, and I'm up by 100 points. And I'm not saying that's a guarantee I'm going to win the thing or whatever, but just saying the team is doing well. And just give you some idea, like a good week is about 300 points, a little over 300. So I have about a third of the week advantage on players that, the second place guy. And that's with injuries to Lance Lynn and to Steven Strasburg and Teoscar Hernandez. So yeah, if I just am required to not screw with it, I'll do a whole lot better. We're a couple minutes in. When people ask me this question, I get a couple questions. This one I thought was funny was somebody says, why am I so hard on Jock Peterson and Travis Shaw? Besides the fact that they're not any good. And, you should throw Todd Frazier in that for good measure. Because the thing that they'll always say to me is, well, they hit 30 home runs a couple years ago. And I'm like, yeah, but that's a dime a dozen. I mean, C.J. Cron got cut after he had 30 home runs. One of my favorite players, just from a watching standpoint, for the Tampa Bay Rays was Logan Morrison. He had 30 home runs and got cut and didn't get picked up by anybody. But there's a lot of players that you could pick up that hit 30 home runs that are much better than Jock Peterson, Travis Shaw, and Todd Frazier. And if you get those guys, that's like it's a symbol of giving up. You should do better. I mean, right now with 30 home runs in the leagues right now, you got some guys that are on everybody's team. Moustakas, Max Muncy, Kyle Schwarber. At a little level down might be available. C.J. Cron, rather have him. Mitch Garver, he gets the advantage that he's a catcher, so he's in the 5 category. But Adam Duvall, I'd rather have 30 home runs. Justin Upton, I'd rather have hit 30 home runs. Evan Longoria, I'd rather have 30 home runs. Joey Votto, by a long way, is at 30 home runs. If you're just going to put on a player just to have a name on your team, why not Miguel Cabrera, who's at 30 home runs? He's going to be better than he's going to be at least as good, if not better, than Travis Shaw. Rougned Odor, who is the second baseman for the Yankees, and he's going to be the second baseman going on. He's at 30 home runs, and he'll steal you some bases too. Of course, he'll bat $145, but that's only about 10 points less than Jock Peterson. Jonathan Scope, his real playing time at Tigers, hit 30 home runs. Brad Miller, the aforementioned University High School Brad Miller, getting real playing time at Philadelphia, hit 30 home runs. Jesus Aguilar down in Miami. Hunter Renfroe in Boston doesn't get half the love that Travis Shaw gets. I don't get it. There's Randall Grichuk. Of course, he's got playing time issues. There's Scott Schebler, just got called up to be the backup of the LA Angels outfield. Daniel Vogelbach, who is getting some at bats at first base because at DH or first base because here is slumping in Milwaukee. Ryan Zimmerman. A couple deep cuts because they're, just got Jed Jorko's at 30 home runs. I think Jed Jorko, like when I hear someone going, I'm going to go get Travis Shaw, like I hear, I'm going to go get Jed Jorko. Don't get me wrong. If Jed Jorko was playing, he's actually better than Travis Shaw. Renato Nunez, who just got sent down. Eric Thames. Either of the Davises, Chris with a K or Chris with a C. Or Jay Bruce, who just retired, or hey, take a shot on Yoenis Cespedes. There's a lot of guys with just 30 home runs that are cheap, unless you're a really desperate need of third baseman. And that's one of the things we do with this waiver wires. We talk in terms of two different things. We talk in terms of the more commonly played 12-team league, and we also talk in the less commonly played 15-team leagues with 30-man rosters. And then a 50-team with 30-man rosters, you often fall into the same problem that you do with AL-only and AL-only leagues, is almost anybody that is playing and somewhat productive is rosterable. And so, yeah, there's a place for Travis Shaw in a league. If the third baseman you drafted is on the COVID list and you're the guy that you thought would fill in for him isn't really hitting, like say Dylan Moore, okay. You pick up Travis Shaw, but you don't have anything special, and you hold him for a week or two. And with that, I'd like to get into. I'm just double checking to see if the standard remove. So I'm still broadcasting, I believe. I hope I am. Anyway, comments. The website is not working right, and it's causing me to talk a little bit more slowly. I decided last week that I was going to change the format of what I talk about, because the truth is, even though I look at every team by team, we draft players position by position. We're looking at the waiver wire, so I'm going to go through this position by position, starting with first base. And I'll go through like the news and the injuries and then say my recommendations for the week. Brandon Belt is still sitting versus lefties. I do like what he's doing. In Boston on Wednesday, Bobby Dahlbeck started in left field, his first game in the outfield, so that's something to pay attention to. He might get you a little more flexibility position-wise. The strange thing was that couldn't get on the website. I'm here though. Yeah, there's a thing that you need to it should be a link right above the thing where you can sign in. It's just enough so that they can use your name on the little thing. But as far as we're concerned, you'll all be Facebook users if you don't do it. Thanks for showing up, the guys. I know it's a little weird thing. So anyway, Marwin Gonzalez played first, which means that the idea of Dahlbeck playing the outfield is something that they're going to revisit, because it would have been just as easy to have Dahlbeck play first, which he's used to, and Marwin Gonzalez play left, which is fine. Miguel Sano's on the deal with a hamstring. Baldelli says it's minor, so it'll come back probably likely to return May 1st, which is too bad because Williams Astadia has been starting at first base, and he's catcher eligible on FBC leagues, not so much on Yahoo, but when you get a catcher eligible guy, and Williams Astadia can hit. He's a hitter. You know, maybe not the most power in the world, whatever, but as a catcher, if he were playing catcher full time, he would be a top 10 catcher in most people's ratings. So it brings me to I'm going to recommend at first base. At first base, there's actually a handful of guys that I like, which is a whole lot different than other positions. The number one guy in my thing is Brandon Belt, right? He's 5'18" with 2 home runs and a steal this week. That's a 1.157 OPS. He sits versus lefties, which is one problem. He's barreling at 19.4% rate with a hard hit. He has a 58% hard hit rate with an expected slugging over 500 based on how he's hitting the ball. He just started out slow because he was recovering from an injury, and then he got the flu, the mysterious flu that everybody gets. Only baseball players get because no one else gets the flu anymore. But he's my number one guy. Joey Votto's number 2. It looks like he's setting up to hit home runs for a change. If you want to get a guy that hits 30 home runs and will do some other things, he's in a potent lineup where runs will happen, RBIs will happen, and even if he hits 250, 260, he'll still get on base 300, at a 350 clip. So it's just something Joey Votto. Remember 3 or 4 years ago when we were saying, boy, the Reds could use some runs. Joey Votto should try to hit for power, and he said, "Who cares?" And then he said, a couple years, the year after that, said the same thing. Well, this year the Reds are actually a halfway decent team. They got some pitching, they got some hitting. They don't really need the runs anymore. So now Votto's going to try to drive in the runs that he's paid to drive in. It's a weird thing. I'm not the biggest Votto fan in the world on a personal level, but as a hitter, he's very good. And my number 3 guy is Bobby Dahlbeck. I know Dahlbeck is yet to homer, but he's hit 324 over the past 14 games, and there's kind of a strange thing is that his sweet spot rate is very high. It's among the leaders in sweet spot rate. And sweet spot rate is basically a barrel without the velocity. So he's hitting 324 because it looks like he's concentrating on hitting the ball in the right spot. He's not swinging as hard as he normally does. He's going to start swinging hard at some point, and you're going to see one of those things where he hits like 11 home runs in a month or something. And that's not super far away because things are working out for him. Sure, he had a rough first week. It caused me to bench him in a number of leagues, but he's been not bad from a standpoint of hitting. Admittedly, the outside production has not been there. The runs, the RBIs, the home runs, but that is coming. In the deepest of leagues, in the FBC, there's not a lot of guys there. I mean, I'm surprised that that any of these names are listed. Oh, I should mention that in the shallow league, CJ Cron is only owned 40% on Yahoo. He's not going to get my upset representation because I don't 100% believe that he's the best hitter in the world, but he's going to have moments in Colorado, as everyone did. It rejuvenated Mark Brown's career. You can't not watch that guy. In the deeper leagues, the number one guy on my list would be Mitch Moreland. He's one of the guys that I'm probably going to try to buy back this week. Thankfully, he had a 2-home run game early in the week, and it kind of got overshadowed by a lot of different things that happened and other people getting called up. So I don't think he's going to cost me an arm and a leg to get back. I mean, I'm not going to say what I'm paid, but it's $1,000 league, so a $10 bid is like bidding $1. So it'll be in the dollar range. Maybe $2. The other guy is Wilmer Flores. There's been a couple of injuries in San Francisco. One to Donovan Solano, and then one to Evan Longoria. Admittedly, they're not going to be all that long on time, but with those two injuries, they're actually playing Wilmer Flores at third base. So he's playing, Belt's playing, and Listella's playing for a little bit. And Flores is a really good hitter. Admittedly, in NFC, he's owned 51% of the time. He's owned 51%, so it's a little above the 50% threshold that I talked about, but it's only barely above it. And the last guy that you should mention is Seth Brown. Seth Brown's in a platoon, looks like with Steve Biscotti, but he's actually had a better week hitting than Mitch Moreland, which is part of the reason why Moreland's going to sit down. But he's owned in 0% of leagues in NFC. He's not ownable in a 12-team league, but in that kind of thing, a good hitter, even if he only plays 4 games a week, is probably worth it. So the recap: that's Brandon Belt, Joey Votto, Bobby Dahlback, Mitch Moreland in the shallower leagues, and in the more common leagues. In the deeper leagues, it's Mitch Moreland, Wilmer Flores, Seth Brown. I'm going to jump over to third base because second base and shortstop, there's a lot of overlap, and I'm going to kind of go through those together. But at third base, fair amount of news going on this week. Brian Haynes had a setback in his recovery from wrist injury while taking swings on Wednesday night. Mike Moustakas, after missing 3 games with an illness, one of those bizarre baseball non-COVID viruses that are going around, was placed on the 10-day last Saturday. He says he's feeling better. He says he's going to come back off on Tuesday, so we can mark the lineup such a way. Kyle Farmer did start at third base in his absence, which is only notable because it meant that they still went with Eugenio Suarez at shortstop, which means that the Eugenio Suarez at shortstop thing is serious for the Reds. It's not just let's see how this works. Brian Anderson went to the L on Thursday with an oblique sprain down in Miami. John Birdie has played all those games since at third base. He's a nice pickup normally for stolen bases, though he's yet to steal a base. But I still would do it. Brad Miller missed 2 games with the Phillies with a stiff neck. He was doing pretty well. He was 5 for 10 going into that. Evan Longoria set out the past games with a hamstring issue, which is getting Wilmer Flores, Listella, and Belt in the same lineup. Alex Bregman returned from the COVID list on Thursday. Jordan Alvarez, too. Don't really have a place to talk about DHs because we don't have DHs in fantasy baseball. There's 2 places in the world, 3 places that you don't have DH in baseball. You have in the highest Japanese league, in the National League, and in fantasy baseball. Third baseman Eduardo Escobar, who's hitting a lot of home runs, not much on the average side, but the other stuff. He played his 10th game at second base on Wednesday, so he gained that eligibility. In Texas, I like both these guys, but they're not going to be worthwhile because they're going to platoon. There's reasons to like Brock Holt. There's reasons to like Charlie Culberson, but they're platooning at third base. Well, that's weird. And the only other note I have here is that Kevin Biggio has made 4 errors in 13 games at third base. It's just one of those things that strikes me as kind of odd because Marcus Semien is playing second. Mark Semien started out the same way where he had trouble fielding shortstop, but then he became rather good at it. And I think he'd make a better third baseman than Kevin Biggio. I don't know if Kevin Biggio, if I were owner of Kevin Biggio, I don't think that he's long to be playing third base, which, I mean, this is early sign stuff, don't get me wrong. I'd probably make the trade in Dynasty to try to shore something up because as an outfielder, things don't look as good. Though if they make that one simple move, Semien to third, Biggio to second, that clean both things up. And I did recommend a while back Tampa's Mike Rousseau, who plays first, second, and third. He's been betting cleanup at least for the last 2 nights for the Tampa Bay Rays. So my recommendations here in the Yahoo leagues and the 12-team more standard leagues, the 3 guys that jump out, and I really can't say which one I like the best. I mean, I'm a homer because in this Yahoo has Nico Horner on third base eligibility. So the 3 names are Nico Horner, J.D. Davis, and Austin Riley. My gut says Riley's the guy to get, but my brain says that J.D. Davis is. Austin Riley had made some staggering improvements last year when it came to, plate discipline, and he's always had the power, which we showed at the end of last year. But his K rate, even though he's hitting fairly well right now, is back up at 30%. That's the kind of thing that says that the improvements last year, which really came from being more disciplined, probably aren't going to stick. Nonetheless, there's a lot to like about him, and we only took about 3 weeks. Maybe he gets back to the basics. Maybe he does those sorts of things. J.D. Davis, on the other hand, is an incredibly hard-hitting batter, and he's hard to keep out of lineup. His average exit velocity is 95.1. To put that in perspective, 95 is what it takes to hit the ball hard. So J.D. Davis averages hitting the ball hard, and that's a pretty neat feat. And then my heart says there's a lot to love about Nico Horner, but I'll get to him when I talk about middle infield, which I think it's where he's more properly talked about. In the NFC leagues, there's not a lot to really get hyped about on third base. And the only one guy that I think should be rostered significantly more is Josh Harrison. He needs to be the first guy you go to, because once you go past him, you're stuck with guys that could have some production, but they're stuck in platoons. Like you could pick one out of Holter Culberson, or you could pick one out of David Bote or Eric Sogard. I have a little bit of, so Sogard's reeling me back in a little bit, by stealing that one base this week, because that's the part of the game that he didn't show last year. Is the capacity to steal 10 or 12 bases, in addition to, normally he's a 285, 290 hitter. Last year he wasn't, but then again, a lot of people weren't. So that's that. Austin Riley, J.D. Davis, Nico Horner, not necessarily in that order. And the deep leagues, Josh Harrison. And then you're kind of scrambling for temporary fixes. All right, we'll get to second base. A little bit of news here. Gene Segura was sent to the DL on Wednesday with a strained right quadriceps, which triggered the activations of prospect Spencer Howard and utility Scott Kingery. Spencer Howard is a top prospect. He's a good pitcher, or at least I believe he'll develop in the one, but he's going to be used primarily in relief with the Phillies. Nick Maton looks like they want to get playing time here, him and Brad Miller, but Brad Miller has missed 2 games with a stiff neck. There's even speculation. Maton has looked pretty good from the plate. He's not exactly a prospect, but he's one of those guys that's impressed management. And there's even speculation that when everyone gets healthy, they may try Maton in center field, which is a spot that they're not fully happy about as of just yet. The Cubs called up Nico Horner, who's eligible at second base and shortstop on every platform. He's hit 3 for 5 with a double in his first game. Hit a run producing double in his second game. He should get playing time at second base. He's prospected as one of he's profiled historically as one of those guys that has really great bat to ball skills. In the minors, he always had a strikeout percentage in the single digits, the 5%, 6% strikeout rate, and he hits the ball relatively hard, but not a lot of power. He's changed his approach a bit, and we saw that in his spring training numbers, where he had 364 with 3 doubles, 2 triples, 2 home runs. With that, what we're expecting with the change in his approach, a jump in his strikeout rate into the low. Luckily, he had room to give. I'm thinking that his strikeout rate is going to be around 12%. Maybe a little bit higher because of the newishness. Sometimes new players new to the big leagues will exhibit an early strikeout rate 3 or 4% higher than what their thing is going to be, because it's just they're getting used to the game. But I'll take that if this turns Nico Horner from a 5 home run a year guy to a 15 home run a year guy. He also runs a little bit, so he's a guy that I really like. I drafted him in a bunch of leagues. I have him in my draft and hold league because that's the only league where I wasn't allowed to drop him, because it's understandable. You draft a guy, most all of my drafts are before the season starts, and you're going to draft guys that don't make the team. And I thought he'd be out for 36 days, but unfortunately, even I couldn't predict how bad Jack Peterson was. At shortstop, in the deeper leagues, you're in pretty much the same boat. Before I leave Yahoo, there are two guys that are above 50, so my recommendations here at second base, that's where I should start, are Nico Horner 1, he's owned 7% of leagues, Colton Wong, he's a guy that I would have drafted, and for some reason he's been cut. A lot of people drafted him, but they cut him because he went on the... What the hell just happened there? Sorry about that. Yeah, so somebody just asked, I'm going to stop for a second. This question, is the website down? Yes, apparently the website is down. I mean, I don't know what that is. I'm not the most technical guy in the first place, and I don't have extra the background. I put a note in to people that I talk to at the site, but it is the weekend, and I've been a long-time weekend broadcaster, and I do not begrudge the fact that they take their weekends. So you don't expect there to be like a quick turnaround. You still have this access. As soon as this thing is over, I do my 20-minute edit, and I'll get it up on the podcast for my 20 or so subscribers. Working for me in Arizona. That's what somebody said here. The crazy thing is that all these people are just Facebook users because they don't have the sign in. So whoever you are, thanks for listening. And yeah, that's what it is. When I logged into the website, I was trying to get the chat room open, and the chat room was doing that thing where it's giving the waiting signal, and I've experienced that 2 or 3 times before over these years. And sometimes you just wait long enough, it comes up. But when I say wait long enough, we're talking, could be 12, 15 minutes. And right now it's still not showing up. Anyway, I should get back to my notes, but I do thank you guys for popping in. I write this so Nico Horner, Colton Wong, and the third guy is Wilmer Flores, based on the playing time thing. I've always liked this bat. Another Facebook user is glad to be here. That's really good. This is like the dating game, except I'm not going to date you guys, and you guys are just listening and making comments. But it's blind. You can say what you are, and I'll pick my favorite. It will be Facebook user number 1, Facebook user number 2, or Facebook user number 3. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they're going to not play the guy. And the truth is that they've actually played him a little bit in the outfield too. If you look at what they've done since when Peterson came out, they called up Chris Bryant. Sorry, when Peterson came up, they called up Nico Horner. But every game since Peterson's been out, Chris Bryant's been playing the outfield, and that's 4 games in the outfield. He should become eligible pretty soon. My notes, and I think that's the way they're going to go. They haven't been happy with the production out of pretty much anybody in their outfield. And putting Brad out there makes pretty good. They're gonna play around with Bote. They're gonna play around with Bote. Play around with Happ till he figures something out. Play around with Sogard in the mix. But Horner is the only guy on their team that has really good contact skills, who's actually hitting the ball well. Now I know that I'm a Cub fan, so I'm a little higher than everyone else. Because it's exciting for me to have that guy there. As great as the Cubs team was in 2016 that won the World Series, and they were great, the 2 guys that were the most important for them, matter of fact, if you want to add a third guy, are the guys that you don't think about. It wasn't Contreras, Rizzo, Bryant, it wasn't those guys. The guys that were more important, I always forget to mention how important Chapman was. So 4 guys that were most important were Aroldis Chapman, and then for hitting-wise, it was Fowler and Zobrist, because those 2 guys being slow and methodical, made everyone a little bit more slow and methodical, but they got base runners on, so when these free swinging guys like Baez, and there was actually people to knock in. The fourth guy was actually Jason Hayward was a big part of that, and people don't give him the credit he deserves. But those aren't the guys you think of when you think of, boy, this Cubs team should have been a dynasty. The reason it hasn't been a dynasty is because they haven't been able to get people on base in front of the guys that hit the ball hard and strike out a lot. It's not enough to swing for the fences and hit home runs and strike out. In order for that to be functionally worthwhile, there's got to be two things that go on. There's to be enough people on your lineup that are getting on base so that when you hit those home runs, they're 2 and 3 run home runs. But moreover, by them getting on base, it means that the whole lineup turns over more often, so you get more at bats, and you get to get the benefit of that even more. So yeah, I think Hoerner's going to play about every day, meaning that he'll play. He might get a day off a week, but to put you in some perspective, it's like Javi Baez had played every day until Saturday. Nico Hoerner took over at shortstop, so there's even that space for him to get in there. Baez could use some time to clear his head. We talked about that. Cubs call up Nico Hoerner. Jazz Chisholm, everyone knows, is playing so well. The Marlins are betting him leadoff now. So, I mean, I said before the season I liked the guy a lot. I just thought he was a little bit raw. It is kind of amazing that everybody went into this magic cooker last year that we didn't get to see, and somehow a lot of them got a whole lot better and we didn't notice it. I'm shocked that Chisholm is this good, this fast. I'm not shocked that he's this good. So my recognitions there are going to be second base, Nico Hoerner, Colton Wong, Wilmer Flores. On the deeper leagues, it's pretty much the same because Nico Hoerner is only owned 46% of the NFBC. Wilmer Flores owned 51%, and Josh Harrison, who we mentioned before, at 27%. For a short-term fill, and the guy, like, whatever you're putting in fab bids for things that you need to replace, you want to get somebody. And so you have these lists of these guys that you would want for $1 in 1,000 league. And right now, one of those guys in the middle infield is Freddie Galvez. He's like a poor man Cesar Hernandez. I mean, he's just not that good at it, but he's hitting well enough, and he'll give you stuff at second base. So Hoerner, Wong, Flores, and then in the deep leagues, Josh Harrison. And the funny thing about the shortstop thing is that Hoerner's going to appear on this list again on both sides because there's a lot of guys that play both positions. Didi Gregorius missed 3 games with the right elbow inflammation, put on the DL Wednesday, which means the Phillies are going to roll with Nick Maton at shortstop and Brad Miller at third base. More time for Maton because Brad Miller has missed a couple days with a stiff neck. He should be back today, though. One of the guys that I'm going to recommend is Josh Rojas. That's based on faith in what he's done in the past, but it seems like with Tim LeCastro out, they've been playing Nick Heath and Pavin Smith in center field, and Nick Hammett at short, which hurts Josh Rojas' playing time. That's one thing to note. Ahmed Rosario started his 8th game in center field and has started 12 of 14 games since playing his first game in the outfield. So Ahmed Rosario is a full-time player. Both Jimenez and Rosario are playing full-time. That should make Lenny happy. Javi Baez got his first day off this Saturday. Andrelton Simmons has cleared his COVID protocols and can return, but according to the team site, look for him to spend like 2 days at the alternate site just to kind of get his bearings, and he should be back by no later than midweek of this week if he's important to you. So back to the thing, we don't have to go to a great deal. The number one shortstop in the Yahoo leagues for me is Nico Hoerner, and then it kind of gets a little bit weak after that. I still like Josh Rojas. I think that that team is not so deep that he's not going to keep getting chances to play, and the fact that he plays multiple positions, third base, second base, shortstop, and 2 outfield spots, he'll get in there. He'd actually be my number 2 guy, and then John Birdie we talked about on the other side. That's all these guys are second base, shortstop would be my number 3. Not super great about it. The only guy that is really rosterable in a 12-team league is Nico Hoerner. In the deeper leagues, Nico Hoerner is in 46% of leagues. The last guy is going to be Freddie Galvez again, who's been putting together some nice little numbers. And you know that I have this special place for. I was answering this question: should Hoerner get everyday playing time? So, yeah, he should. And then my number 2 guy owning 70% of leagues is Jose Iglesias, who I own in NFBC. I'm one of the 17. This week he started doing what he's been doing. Hit a home run, got a stolen base, hitting a little over 300. That's what you're going to get from him. I'm not a lot of home runs, a lot of stolen bases, but some of that, and I think an improvement over what he's done in the past. Meaning, you might be pushing 10 on those things. He's finally in a home where they like him and they want him to play. So that's it. Horner, and then Rojas, Birdie, Iglesias, Galvez. The other thing is NFBC, Rojas is owned above 50% of the time, so is Birdie. So they're not on that list for the deep leagues. Oh, let me get the outfield. Outfield is a long march. A lot of information, a lot of teams, a lot of things. So we'll start with one of the things we do to keep this thing a little bit tighter than I had in the past. Hi, dude. This is Lenny Melnick, Fantasy Sports, saying that, which means that's Andrea. Hi, Andrea. Dudette. I'm going to work on the assumption the way this thing is working, the way it's supposed to work is Lenny is doing a show Monday through Friday for an hour. You should be there at 9 o'clock. If you can, you can listen to it on a podcast. Andrea does a show on Saturday for an hour, hour and a half. Normally at 12:30. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. And then I do a show on Sunday, so you have at 30. And so I'm going to talk to Andrea about us matching up on our times because it would just make more sense if we could say Monday through Friday at 9, Saturday at 12 or 12:30, and I'm actually open to some other things. I'll take that quick moment to say these things out loud. When I sometimes think I'm going to do something and I forget about little things. And when I said I was going to move to Saturday, I forgot about the fact that I do a conference call with my family in the morning. And you know what Sunday morning is to me? Some people go to church. My church is spending an hour mowing my lawn. So with the rain, I wasn't going to mow the lawn this morning, but it might help me to start an hour later. So I'm going to try to talk Andrea and to starting her show at 1 o'clock on Saturday and my show at 1 o'clock on Sunday, which will make everything work. But it'll be in this afternoon thing, and we'll get things through. Now, back to the outfield. I'm not going to talk about everybody, but the big guys are going to get talked about. Juan Soto was placed on deal on Tuesday with a shoulder sprain. Andrew Stevenson replacing him. The Juan Soto stay is expected to be a little bit longer than minimum. Mike Trout missed Friday and Saturday with an elbow contusion, suffered Thursday with a hit by pitch in the fourth inning. So that means that of the top five the guys that everyone is picking, everyone is missing a little bit of time. Trout's probably not going to make the DL, just going to need a rest. Christian Yelich, the news is a little worse for. He hasn't played since April 11th. Went on deal on the 17th, and is now reported that he's getting an MRI on Monday because his recovery has hit a plateau. Starling Marte was put on the IL on Monday. I took with a great deal. It's with a cracked rib. He'll probably be out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Lewis Brinson got the first call and did what he normally does, which is bat 1 for 30. But last night, Magneuris Sierra started in center field. He's a little more interesting because he has much better contact skills than Lewis Brinson, and he can theoretically steal bases. He stole between 17 and 31 bases every year of his career, if you count minors and majors and combining the two. Alex Verdugo, you'll see on some things listed as day-to-day. I wanted to check to see if he was playing before this, if he was marked on the rest of the thing. Apparently, after the game yesterday, he reported some cramping in his hamstring. I don't think it's serious, but you're just in a situation where you might be taking one day off. Where's the Boston thing? And it's showing their outfield is going to be JD Martinez is going to play left field today. So that's interesting. So their outfield is going to be Martinez, Hernandez, and Hunter Renfroe, with Xander Bogaerts getting a half day off at DH. Max Kepler was placed on the COVID IL on Tuesday with the Twins. The Twins had missed a few days because of COVID protocols. It looks like it was Max Kepler along with outfielder Kyle Garlick and relief pitcher Caleb Thielbar that spawned the calling up of Kirilloff and Nick Gordon, G5, or actually he wants to be called Flash G the Third now. His last album was listed as that. I don't know how permanent those things are. Baltimore outfielder Antti Santana was placed on the IL Wednesday with a sprained ankle. Team is reporting 2 to 4 weeks to recover. They recalled Ryan McKenna. Not that he's the best guy in the world. Braves, Guillermo Heredia. There was Jeremy Hermida. That was I almost said. Guillermo Heredia has been playing center fielder with Ender Inciarte and Christian Pash going the IL back-to-back dates. Heredia is 6 for 21 in this strands, which is 286 with 2 home runs, 6 runs, and 6 RBIs, which is pretty good. He's been a guy who's prone to have some short bursts of being fantasy relevant, where we all ask ourselves, is he going to be the next thing? And the answer to him being the next thing is always no, but there still might be some value into rostering him in the short playing, or I can cop out and say he's well worth it in then only leagues. Jock Peterson's stint on the IL he's put on the IL with poor performance. He's blaming his wrists, though. Has Chris Bryant playing the outfield 4 games. The Reds are platooning Tyler Naquin and Nick Senzel. I like Naquin. I'm not crazy about Senzel, but I don't like the fact that Whittington has less playing time. Diminishes both their values. In Colorado, their starting center fielder for the last 5 games has been Jonathan Daza, and he's been hitting 344 for them this year. A lot of guys have high average playing in Colorado. What's happened is that the Rockies are benching Josh Fuentes for poor performance at third base, which moves McMahon from second to third, which moved Hampson in from center to second base, which created the opening for Jonathan Daza in center field. Any starter on Colorado is interesting, but this guy does not have much power. And although he stole 31 bases in 2018, at 2019 he stole 12 of 21, which is a pretty poor performance versus. I shared it to every LMS page, every single one of them. It's shared to all of them according to the thing. I shared it to all of them. All right, we're gonna take a moment just to sit there and see. Yeah, it says that there's an error to one of them, but it's shared to one of them. It's shared to Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports. It's shared to this. Yeah, it's shared. One of them had failed. The Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports site. It failed at, but everywhere else it's. What time is it right now? Yeah. Yeah, if that one site is the one that requires the broadcast, well, that wouldn't affect the chat room, which is really what I'm worried about. But within StreamYard, and this is really just for our management, it's saying that it lost connectivity to the other LMS site, which I can't do anything about because I don't have the passwords to that. So, but let me go check to see if that's there, because the chat room on the LMFS site, is one of the best things about the entire site, because there's usually some really good interactive banter. People will pose questions, people will answer questions before we get around to them, but it's in that discussion that things go pretty well. And I don't see it. That stinks. Ha! I'm laughing for no reason. Yeah, the chat room is still not working. Anyway, I'll keep going. Sorry about that break. Maybe I'll edit out for the podcast. They're platooning that. Garrett Hampson there. Chris Taylor missed past 3 games for the Dodgers with a back issue. The beat writers are reporting he's feeling better and may start today. Avisel Garcia left Friday's game and missed Saturday's game with back tightness. Philip Evans has played his 7th game in the outfield subsequent to Anthony Alford's demotion. Brian Reynolds just moved over to center field, but Philip Evans is a guy that's going to be remaining in their lineup with third base and outfield eligibility, which happened just a couple days. Kyle Lewis returned from the DL on Tuesday in Seattle and has moved right into their cleanup hitter. Tyler O'Neill returned from the IL on Friday, which caused them to bench Matt Carpenter because they pushed Tommy Edman into third base. Austin Hayes returned from the IL on Thursday, which turned Ryan McKenna into a pumpkin. That's why I was down on him. Billy Hamilton returned from the IL, but hasn't started a game yet. Andrew Vaughn has remained for all 3 games that Hamilton was around as the left fielder. Detroit finally moved back Akil Baddoo into a key part of the lineup Saturday, batting second. And when we had like an off day, the 3rd off day of his career, they decided to give him a day off to rest. Detroit, there's a similarity between Badu and Jazz Chisholm as far as their physicality and what they can do. Admittedly, Chisholm was a much higher rated prospect, but Akil Badu was not without respect. But they're big, fast, got a lot of power, and are somewhat raw talents because of lack of playing time. They aren't as experienced with it as they have. Part of that makes both of them fearless for some reason. But the Marlins are embracing it, moving them up the lineup. Detroit is doing everything they can to keep them out. That's the difference between good organizations and bad organizations. For the A's, it appears Seth Brown and Piscotty are in a platoon. Kyle Isbell, the outfielder that a lot of people bid on in Kansas City, who I do like, was DFA'd on Friday, replaced by Ryan McBroom. Adolis Garcia is ensconced in the outfield in Texas in the cleanup spot and has played 2 games under center field. I do think that Adolis will be the big bid this weekend, and he'll be worth it because not only is he the starting right fielder, I believe that once minor league games start, for the sake of Leodis Taveras, who's a prospect that is going to be decent one day, they're going to move him to the minors, which makes Adolis Garcia your big hitting center fielder, much like Mike Trout. In Seattle, Sam Haggerty has started the last 3 games in the outfield. He's including against the righty, so it looks like he might be the new placeholder du jour for waiting for Jared Klenick's call up. He has stolen three stolen bases in I think 15 games, and he did steal 49 in the minors just a couple years ago. But he's taking that time from Trammell. But he's got the same sort of positive world. He could steal you some bases, and he's already got 3. David Dahl has a minor shoulder issue. Hasn't played in the last 3 games, and that's the other part about their outfield. In there, yeah, Garcia, he's not going anywhere. He's going to play, and he's going to hit some home runs. Teoscar Hernandez and George Springer are close to returning, and of course Kirilloff was picked up here. I have a couple extra names in here because most people have more than 3 or more outfield slots, but in the shallow leagues, the Yahoo type leagues, I do believe that Adolis Garcia is the number 1 pick this week. I think the number 2 pick for me is Brandon Belt for reasons I already told you before. And I don't think he's as far behind as people like to say, but Adolis Garcia, he's 3rd in barrels per plate appearance behind only Buxton and Rafael Devers. He hits the ball hard, and good things are going to happen when he hits the ball as hard as he does, and the fact that there's nobody in his way. I think if you're bidding on this guy, the worst thing you do on a fab bid is you bid $300 on somebody that only plays 3 weeks. The only thing that's keeping this guy out of lineup until the end of the year is his health. Brandon Belt's number 2. He's got the problem being kept out of lineup by their perceived belief on lefties and wanting to get Wilmer Flores into the lineup at least something. Adam Duvall's only on 32% of leagues. He had Justin Upton. Justin Upton is the guy that I think is. I've never been a big fan of that 30 home run guy that used to be good, who has been putzing around for a while. But of these guys, Justin Upton's the class, because first and foremost, when Justin Upton was good, he was very good, unlike most of those other names. And second, they seem to be committed to him. They're batting him 4th. He's 5th in the major leagues in exit velocity, average exit velocity, behind Nelson Cruz, Pete Alonso, Shohei Ohtani, and Giancarlo Stanton. But he doesn't have a 30% K rate. So, he is what he is. He's going to be if he manages to stay healthy, he's going to have a hard time hitting 260, but he's going to hit you 30 home runs. And in a lineup where he's batting behind Trout and Ohtani, he's going to knock in a good number of runs. There could be some real value there. When I was going through that list of 30 home run guys at the beginning, extra home run guys, it's like, this is the guy that people should love. But they love Todd Frazier. They love Jock Peterson. They love Travis Shaw. This is the guy. And he might disappoint you. And you should love Miguel Cabrera, too, because he's done so much for baseball. But I know he's not what he once was. And then the third guy is Austin Riley, which we talked about. I have a gut feeling that things are going to get better for him, even though the strikeout rate is a little bit damaging. And in Yahoo leagues, Ramil Tapia is still available in 27% of leagues, and he's just starting to warm up right about here, even though his numbers are not bad. In the deeper leagues, Dallas Garcia is only owned in 29% of leagues. There's not a lot of choosing over there. The next best pick is probably Guillermo Heredia for a short-term pick. He's owned in 27 leagues. There are some speculative ads. Once you get past that, there aren't really three outfielders that are widely available in a two-catcher, 15-team format. But this is a thing where you might speculate about Nomar Mazara. He's available in like 40% of leagues. I know he's hurt, but he'll be back in a week or two. You could play around with Jordan Luplo's splits if you're in a, if he's, you can start him in weeks where they're playing mostly lefties. So the truth is, when he's playing righties, the only thing he'll do is he'll pinch hit versus a lefty. So that actually could work out well for you either way. And then Jarren Duran in the outfield might be a call-up that's sooner than later in Boston. So that's what it is. Dallas Garcia is the big bet. Still like Belt, still like Duvall. Justin Upton should get some love. Austin Riley, Ramil Tapia are guys that I've been backing since the beginning of the not really since the beginning of the year. And then Guillermo Heredia for deeper leagues. And we are at the 51 mark. So this is working out just fine. I'm not going to catcher's next on the list, so I'm not going to dwell too much on catcher because there's really no point in it. In the shallow leagues, there's some good catchers available, but there probably should be because if you really think about it, right? In a 10-team league, you should have Real Muto, Perez, Contreras, Will Smith, Yamazani Grandel, Christian Vasquez, Travis d'Arnaud, Yadier Molina, and in Yahoo, Kiner Falefa qualifies at catcher, even though he's not hitting all that well. The number of bats and the stolen bases make it worthwhile. And then probably Gary Sanchez. That's your 10-team league. In your 12-team league, you had James McCann, Austin Nola, who's hurt, but they replaced him with Wilson Ramos, and then you even got Buster Posey, which is a 13. The fact that Omar Narvaez, Carson Kelly, and Tucker Barnett are available doesn't mean an awful lot. They probably should be on teams. I could understand very easily replacing James McCann with any of those three names. Carson Kelly, Omar Narvaez being 1, Kelly being 2, Tucker Barnett being a little step down in 3. And I could see if you had some guts, you might replace Kiner Falefa with Narvaez or Kelly. I was presented with that opportunity in one league and I declined it, but I understand the motivation. In the deepest of leagues, there are two guys owned at 12%. One is Williams Astudillo, who we talked about is playing first base, playing third base, still has catcher eligibility in those leagues. And I'll still say it, Kyle Higashioka. At some point, Gary Sanchez is either going to get demoted, traded, or benched. And this guy's going to be a decent hitter on a decent lineup. That's my entire rant about catchers. That's the whole thing. Really, relatively speaking, there's not much to see there. I mean, to give you an idea, I'm in my NFBC league. I have Tom Murphy, who hasn't had a hit in his last 15 at bats, and I'm just going to roll with it because that's what it is. Let's talk about pitchers. Let's talk about closers for a minute. I'll go through everything that I saw happen this week on the closing side, but there are 3 closers in Yahoo that are available in a good number of leagues. Taylor Rogers is available 57% of the league. He's the highest one, but Diekman is available in 31, and it looks like that's a committee in Oakland, and Stephen Crichton is in 13. Diekman got the save for the A's on Friday and on Wednesday with Lou Trevino pitching in the 8th on Wednesday. So that does look, but Trevino got the 2 previous saves and didn't really do anything to lose it. So I think it might be a matchup thing with lefty versus righty, and there's a reason why they brought, whatever, in the 8th inning, Trevino was facing better batters who are righties or something like that. Stephen Crichton got his hit in the hand when a comebacker in the 10th inning on Thursday. Had x-rays done and they came back negative. I believe he played the day after that. Rafael Dolis earned a save on Friday and a hold on Tuesday. That save went to Anthony Castro. It looks like Jordan Romano is coming back. But he took the loss on Saturday, pitching the 8th inning of a tied game and allowing 2 runs. We never really want players to do badly, but I do own Dolis in one league and Romano in none. And so that's good for my Dolis thing. I don't know who the closer is going to be going forward. If these guys are available in your leagues, I would not spend a ton of money on either one of them because of the relatively short nature of it. Diego Castillo of the Tampa Bay Rays blew a save on Wednesday. Then he went to the IL with vaccine reactions, whatever that is. And so that gave Andrew Kittredge a save in the ninth on Friday. But Castillo's reinstated. There's really not a lot to see there. But if you see that he missed a game with injury, I think you ought to know what that is. In Kansas City, Josh Stelmont, of the 5 guys that might get saves there, got his first save after Greg Holland spent the day on the injured reserve on Saturday. And he went on the injured reserve for an unspecified reason. That's what it says. So apparently you can do that now. There's such a thing as the one-day unspecified reason reserve. I guess it's got to be the COVID stuff, right? Because basically he said don't talk about it. Alex Comey blew a save and the lead on Wednesday. Taylor Rogers got to the next save on Friday. That, I believe, is a changing of the guard. You can't really say it after one. On the relief side, other than that, in fantasy baseball, you pretty much only pick up relievers for saves, so there's not much to talk about after that. I still have my doubts about Yimi Garcia long term, so I'm going to still talk about Dylan Floro for a second. There, that second's done. I still like what I see out of Dwayne Underwood in Pittsburgh in the middle. I think he could be on something. And a guy that popped up on a lot of the lists that I looked at, you know, like the fewest barrels, lowest batting average, is a guy I never heard of named Phillips Valdez. He's a relief pitcher for Boston. I'm not saying pick him up, but he's a name to watch. And I have this one note here about Stephen Critton. Stephen Critton has yet to allow a barreled hit this year. There's only 3 players in baseball, three players in baseball who haven't allowed a barrel hit this year, admittedly having pitched to at least 25 batters. And that would be Stephen Critton, Cesar Valdez, the guy that's a lockdown closer in Baltimore now. He's just the guy, not locked down in the sense that he's awesome at it, but he does a fine job, and there's going to be no competition there. And then Dylan Floro, who I brought up, and that's part of the reason why I brought up the Floro for a second. No, the starting pitchers are a much different story. There's a lot of guys out there that there's a reason for them to pique your curiosity, but there's not a lot of great players out there. I was trying to figure out who the guys are that I would really go with, and I'm doing it. So I'm actually doing this a little bit differently than the other side. I'll go through the news. Framber Valdez started throwing off a mound on Thursday. They didn't give a timetable, but throwing off the mound is usually the last step before they get called up. And so if he's available in your leagues, you probably get him for $1 or $2 this week, and he'll cost $35 next week. Eliezer threw a bullpen on Thursday, which puts him about 2.5 weeks out. Lance Lynn said he plans to be back on Friday, was on IL with a back issue, but he said he'll be back by Friday. Steven Strasburg threw on a flat surface, which is the first step of the process comeback. At 75 feet, but he's working his way back. The manager said he looked pretty good. They decided to push up Max Scherzer's start, so they're basically going with a 4-man rotation, which that bodes well for Strasburg because it means that they're not looking for anything close to even a midterm replacement. They think that he misses 1 start, maybe 2, and he's back. So that makes me feel good about Strasburg a little bit. Max Fried is close to returning. He's throwing off a mound also. He's feeling good, according to Snitker. And Snitker said they'd like him to take a couple of swings before he calls him up, but he would probably come up this week. He went to the IL on the 14th with a hamstring strain. The earliest available to come back would have been today. Dinelson Lamet, here's some good. According to San Diego Union Tribune, will be making a minimum stay on the IL. They reported that on Thursday. Apparently, team physicians claim his elbow and forearm are structurally sound, and he didn't even need an MRI. This would be in a return on the 2nd of May. Jake Odorizzi was removed after 1 batter on Friday with forearm tightness. He was replaced by Ken Emanuel, making his big league debut, who went on in a very Eddie Shore-like way of pitching 8.2 innings of 5-hit, no-walk baseball, 2-run ball, allowing just 2 home runs, 2 home runs, 1 to Albert Pujols, which, you know, he's going to be able to say, I allowed a home run to Albert Pujols, which that's pretty cool. And the other one is Shohei Ohtani, who that's got to be pretty good. There's nothing in his background. I tried to look to see if this is anything pretty good, but with that kind of outing, he's got to have at least a little some consideration for the next outing. You know, the next covering outing, or as he misses any kind of length of time. I'm not going to jump over fences to get him, but he is who he is. Carlos Carrasco, according to Venezuelan and Chinese news sources, this is the craziest thing, right? He is set to come off the IL on May 2nd and make his debut. Normally, everything that I look up, it's not like I know like 2 or 3 people. I actually know that might know something about the Cubs or might know something about the Twins or the Rays, and I rarely ever use those favors for something unless it's really important. Most of what I do is I read a lot of different things, and this idea of credible sources. These sources are not credible, but the fact that there's 2 of them makes it a little bit more credible. But so Carrasco, if he's available, you should pick him up. You start thinking you shouldn't blow a lot of money on a replacement pitcher this week because you're going to get Carrasco back before too long. And then we get to American Nations. So there's a lot of starting pitchers that have reasons there. If I had my druthers, like the 2 guys that I like the most are not available in leagues that I play in, but they're 53% and 43% owned, and it's Danny Duffy of the Royals and Kyle Gibson of the Angels. Kyle Gibson, his first game, he pitched 1/3 of an inning, letting up 5 runs with 8 hits. Sorry, it was like 4 hits, 4 walks. Just horrible. But since then, he's been 207. He's been 2-0 with a .67 ERA and a .93 WHIP. Every single one of his games has been 6 innings or more. He's pitched as many as 8 in one game. Players are batting .206 against him. That guy looks to be like a pretty good, solid, back rotation guy. He's the kind of numbers he's putting up are what you would expect to get from Adam Wainwright if he was pitching well. Danny Duffy, I've seen him pitching. There was a time when he was a guy that we were drafting in the top 100, and maybe he's gotten back to that. So far, he got a .50 ERA and a 1.11 WHIP, 19 strikeouts, 18 innings. Everything looks good there. So those are the 2 guys I'd want the most. They're not available to me. There are other guys that are also not available that I think are pretty good. J.A. Happ had a bad spring, so I didn't draft him because he's a guy that sometimes takes a while to warm up, but he looks like J.A. Happ, which is what it is, a solid pitcher. Ryan Yarbrough. Actually, Ryan Yarbrough and Josh Fleming, both of the Rays, have looked pretty good. They're both very good at limiting hard contact. And Yarbrough was a guy that I wanted to draft, who was drafted higher than I thought he was worth, but now he's available a lot of places. John Gray, no, let's not get to him. Dane Dunning of Texas, JT Brubaker, we talked about a lot last week. John Gray is owned in 30% of the leagues, and it makes you nervous starting a guy that plays in Colorado, and I almost never would do it, but I don't think I'd do it with Gray, but it's worth noting that he's with 30% of the league. In the deeper leagues, and one of the things about the deeper league pitchers will have a lot. Deeper league starting pitchers will have a lot more impact on the shallow league starting pitchers because there's a lot more fluidity in the pitching staff. In a shallow league of 12 teams, you pretty much have to be a top 50 pitcher to be a guy that you just start and forget about. Top 50 is pretty elite. It's not super great, but it's among the better pitchers. I didn't do this beforehand, which I probably should have, but I'm going to look up who's the number 50 pitcher. Player list. Because this is an important. This is a relatively minor yet somewhat important point. All players. Filter. Actually, got to do starting pitchers. Breaking news here. Jake DeGrom's a pretty good pitcher. So the preseason number 50 was Sandy Alcantara. Number 51 was Tristan McKenzie. That's where David Price was. So it doesn't take a lot for a guy that's 1% owned to jump into that 40% owned and be this good. You can be as good as Herman Marquez or Aaron Savali. That's why I said a pretty good year so far. So I'm going to go back to the thing. So before the season started, there was these guys that had massive improvement over the course of spring training, and I had talked in my first show about Casey Mize, Carlos Rodon, and Dylan Cease, and there were other guys on that list. And one of the guys on the list that might be overlooked here is Cole Irvin. He had done some tweaks, and by the last game of spring training, he had struck out 10 batters in 7 innings. And it seems like the Oakland A's have a way of producing some guy that shouldn't be that great, like Chris Bassett, and making him seem pretty good. So my vote for that guy is going to be Cole Irvin, and I think he's going to get drafted next year, and by a lot of people be disappointing next year. But he struck out 16 batters in 16 innings. He has a 4.60 ERA, 115 WHIP. And I think things are getting better there. Chris Flexen, who I've had on a team and cut, he had a seven inning game yesterday where he let up 1 run. He's pretty good. But there are guys that are interesting, like those, like Flexen, like Jeff Hoffman. I don't understand how Caleb Smith's not owned. If you love the Florida pitchers, Caleb Smith's the Florida pitcher, just in Arizona now. He's got all the same makeup. Justin Dunn has been pitching well for the Seattle Mariners. But the two guys I want to talk about are Alex Wood, whose one outing really sort of impressed me, and Koya Arihara, who's a guy that Koya Arihara started the year. The thing when we first met Koya Arihara was in spring training. In his first spring training game, he lit up, I think, 2 home runs to Shohei Ohtani. That's when we met him, was those things. And he had a really horrible, 6-run first game. But over the course of his spring training, he came up to a pretty decent ERA overall. But when you let up 6 runs in one game, you're not going to bring your ERA down to 250. And then he had a relatively bad first game where he pitched 4.2 innings, let up 3 runs or something like that. But he has been pretty good since then. He throws a bunch of different pitches. He throws a slider, a cutter, a curve, a change, a splitter, and a fastball. And the fastball by itself is his worst pitch by the grading that they're giving it. So he's actually made a change from game 1 to game 3, where he's decreased the use of his fastball by about 10%, and increased use of splitter to about 10%, with a double from 3 to 10%. So he's actually learning what he's supposed to be doing, and it's given him a 2-1 record of 2.21 ERA and 0.93 WHIP. He is likely the second best pitcher on the Rangers team, but that's not saying an awful lot. The one drawback on him is that when they hit him hard. His the average exit velocity is 94 miles per hour. The expected slugging is 596. The expected batting average is 306. I bring that up because people are going to be touting him as the big pickup on the pitching side this week, and I think there's going to be a lot of money thrown that way. I'm going to throw a little money that way. I mean, I'll probably throw. I can't see going more than 25 in 1,000. There would be 3 in 100 Fab League, but there's reasons to worry there. I think that he could be a decent, okay pitcher, but I don't think he's not as good as those numbers are, and I wouldn't pay like those numbers are there. Now, Alex Wood, on the other hand, he just has that weird deceptive delivering, and they don't hit him well, and he got a fewer strikeouts than anything, and I think strikeouts will come. And the Giants did such a good job of reclaiming certain packages, that I think that every time I see Gausman, all I can see is an ace pitching up there. You gotta buy a little early buy a little late for cheap. So this might be a week you could pick up Alex Wood for $2 in 100, for 15 in 1,000. I hold him for a little bit, but those are the guys. So yeah, the guys I'm recommending are J-Hap. Let's do it. Danny Duffy, Cal Gibson, J-Hap, Jake Arrieta, Ryan Yarborough, Cole Irvin, and Alex Wood on the deeper side. And that gets me through everybody. And we're at 1 hour and 9 minutes, which is about the right amount of time. I'm sorry we had technical difficulties. Apparently, our broadcast software is not talking with our with our website software. There's some problem there. The lessons we learned today, it's like learn from my mistakes and don't be your own worst enemy. Stick with your plan. Don't pick up a player unless there's a better player out there. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it. And just because a guy's injured, that's not the thing. You should look at his injury thing. And the truth is, this is about the time that there would have been nothing wrong with holding Nico Horner for these 3 weeks. What did I really get out of Donovan Solano and Jose Iglesias? It's not like I got a whole lot better. I'd like to thank the chat room. You guys are being here. Between Facebook user 1, Facebook user number 2, and Facebook number 3, I'm choosing Facebook user number 3 because he asked the best question, and so we'll be going on a date to historic downtown San Francisco. It'll be a 2-night stay, something like that. That's a dating game reference before. Remember, Lenny's show is on Monday at 9:00, Monday through Friday. That's when the chat room is its liveliest. It'll be working by Monday, I'm sure. Andrea's on at 12:30 on Saturday. That's the plan so far. I'm going to try to meet us up. I might be back here at 12:30 next week, though I'd like to maybe push it for more hour. George is on tonight at 6:30 p.m. And then, of course, and that's something that you should listen. I can't describe it, so you should come listen to it just so you know what it is that you've been missing all these years. The roundtable on Monday at 8:00 last week, we had some good lively discussion until the first hour was up, and then the second hour, because it's a big part of baseball, there was a discussion of COVID. And it was a decent discussion of COVID, but if you're looking for baseball discussion, it's not the thing, and people think that those things are political. But the truth is, we're not going to get everything back. COVID is still the biggest issue in baseball, and act like it doesn't exist would be stupid. Maybe we went a little bit long on Monday. Probably should have kept it at 10 minutes, but it's important, not just from a world standpoint, but from a fantasy standpoint. And maybe next week I'll be mowing the lawn. With that, I'd like to say goodbye. Next, I'm going to do one thing first. It said that all I have to do is this. So I'm going to try it. No, apparently it doesn't work. Unable to launch. Yeah, there's something wrong here. Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll see you again next weekend.